Good morning. Welcome to EduSet Network. Friend, as you know, today we have topic for discussion: society and advertisement. Advertisement has become part of our life. Whether you are in drawing room or on the road, you have to see the advertisement. It catches your attention. So, and either we make a decision for the day-to-day life, purchasing anything, or for the even important things for the career or any other things, we have to take the help of advertisement. Sometimes it happens, but even though we don't sometimes believe, but we have to get the attention of the advertisement. So how we try to find out how advertisement is made, what is the message inside, how it catches the attention, the different process of making advertisements. We'll try to decipher it, and we'll also try to understand how it has impact on the society. So there are interface between both advertisement and society. We'll try to understand today's lecture, and for discussion on this very topic, we have in the studio eminent media scholar Dr. Shalini Narayanan. She holds a DPhil degree in philosophy from University of Allahabad, a merit holder, and she joined the Indian Information Service after clearing the UPSC in 1990. And recently she has taken voluntary retirement. But before this, she was holding charges of training of Indian Information Service at Indian Institute of Mass Communication, a training academy of IAS officers. And in her 5-year stint at IMC, she successfully trained over 150 officers and was also the program director for the PGD in advertising and public relations at IMC for a year. So, and apart from this, we'd like to also tell you that Dr. Narayanan was one of the participants from India at the 9th South Asia Media Summit held in Goa in October last year, where she spoke on social media, absolute freedom versus regulation. So I think her knowledge and experience will help us to understand this relation between society and advertisement. So on your behalf, I welcome her for EduSet lecture on this very topic. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, Amrendraji. So today, like very rightly you just said, that advertising is there everywhere around us. On the way to the studio at CEC, I mean, I could not escape so many ads around me, you know, whether it's hoardings or whether it is, those are in the newspapers or on auto. Of course, you know, with the Delhi elections coming up, you have the jhadu is ubiquitous. So, I mean, advertisements are something which we cannot escape. When my niece comes home, she sings a jingle from an ad. So you see the influence of ads is all pervasive in society as such. But before we go down to how advertisements impact us, we need to understand how they are framed. So let me go back to the basics first and go to a definition of advertising. If you look at the slide, I have put in two definitions of advertising, which I'll just read out to you. One is from C.L. Bowie, Contemporary Advertising. This was framed in 1992, which says advertising is the non-personal communication of information, usually paid for and usually persuasive in nature, about products, services or ideas by identified sponsors through the various media. This is in a nutshell one of the accepted definitions of advertising. And the American Marketing Association has had a similar definition, which it has updated in its online version. The updated definition reads: the placement of announcements and persuasive messages in time or space purchased in any of the mass media by business firms, non-profit organizations, government agencies, and individuals who seek to inform and or persuade members of a particular target market or audience about their products, services, organizations, or ideas. This is a more comprehensive definition, as you can see. It includes, it not only talks about commercial advertising, but also about non-profit or social advertising. And what you will see is that it not only includes products, it also includes services, organizations, or ideas. To break up the definition and go into its nutshells, if you look at the elements that constitute advertising, the first and foremost is non-personal. You see, in today's day and age, when you have a market which comprises several millions of people, personal selling is not really possible, and hence the use of mass media. And so that what happens is, this is not a face-to-face selling. This is a this is selling through mediated communication, and advertising includes information. Of course, as you know, with the limited resources at the disposal of the advertiser and the limited time at their disposal, the information is necessarily incomplete, because, as you know, a product may have several aspects to it, and all of it may not be possible to be put within, let's say, a 30-second commercial. So, and of course, the basic idea behind advertising is to persuade. So the information that is actually put out before a prospective buyer or a target audience is one that may be necessarily incomplete. Besides that, the biggest the element that is behind the whole of the advertising industry is persuasion, or to create preference. Persuasion for towards buying a product, or it could be a service, or it could be taking into account the values identified with an organization, or even buying of an idea. For all this, persuasion is required, and persuasion is a very, very difficult technique. We'll go into some of them later, but this is one of the essential elements of advertising. And the biggest differentiator when it comes to advertising is that it is paid for or purchased. Unlike a public relations campaign, which is actually not paid for, advertising is something for which a sponsor actually pays. So when you see an advertisement, either for a government organization, or for a commercial organization, or a non-profit organization, you understand that particular space or that particular time has been purchased by the advertiser to persuade its audience about itself. Another very important aspect of advertising is a delineation of your target audience. Now, why is that important? Because you see, there are, in India alone, you have a 1.2 billion population, and it is not possible to have a monolithic persuasive argument for purchase of or persuasion of any product, etc., for one entire monolith like that. So, what advertisers do is they delineate their target audiences. They decide that this is the kind of buyer we are looking at, and they target their messages accordingly. This target audience may be differentiated on the basis of age, sex, or their socioeconomic classification. They may be distinguished on the basis of psychographics, that is, what are the kind of psychological characteristics that distinguish them. And of course, the advertising also includes the product or service or organization or idea itself, for which the entire persuasion is actually tailored around. So, so the point is that that through advertising, the advertiser is trying to give a value to its product or a service or its organization enough so that you would want to hand out cash. And of course, every ad will have an identified sponsor. Otherwise, there's no point, because only when you know that a particular advertisement is sponsored by somebody will you actually associate that product with that company. For example, there are millions of watches around. If you go to, in Delhi, if you go to Lajpat Nagar or Sarojini Nagar, you'll find hundreds of those 100 rupee watches, 150 rupee watches, which are basically use and throw. And why do you buy them? You buy them maybe because you like their design or something, but you know that they don't carry that value. So in the watch market, how does a watchmaker distinguish itself. For that they use advertising, which may be, for example, if you look at, there are so many film stars promoting various watches. So, for instance, I mean, if you say a Titan watch, everybody knows that Tata is the behind that particular brand, and so that value comes to that particular model of that watch, and you know that if you buy it, it will last, it will be of good quality, and you are assured of certain basics. So that is the purpose of the advertising then. So, so to go on to the next, you know that that when somebody is buying space, spending so much money, and we'll go into the entire process of how the ad is actually generated, you'll understand how much effort and thought goes into it. So when an advertiser is putting in so much of effort and time and money into it, what does he expect? So basically he's looking for a return on investment, or ROI. This ROI is a phrase which is extremely important in advertising, because no manufacturer or company would like to spend money without getting anything in return. So the basic idea is that you spend money on advertising so that you get buyers that are persuaded to buy whatever elements, whatever products or services or goods or ideas that you are trying to sell them. So for how do you get return on investment? Return on investment will come when you are able to grab eyeballs, that is, of the target audience. So you have defined that there is a certain segment of the population which you think will be interested in your product, and you are targeting them. And if you don't get their attention after spending money, the whole exercise is a waste. A lot of times you get your attention, but there is no connect. For instance, this is, if you look at the ads for Fast Track, Fast Track has made carries the value of a youthful brand. So, so the kind of visuals that are associated with it, the products themselves are designed to appeal to youngsters. So you have that connect with the audience, which persuades them to buy your product. Without that, the exercise becomes meaningless. And then, of course, you need to have an ad which people are able to recall. And at the end of the whole exercise, the entire exercise, what you want is for your target audience to go out there, ask for your particular brand and buy into it. So that is the idea behind advertising. How do you get there? You know, that is the question. Let's assume you're a manufacturer of let's say cameras. How do you distinguish your camera from another company's camera? So so that's a very, I mean, I want to repeat my favorite analogy here of an advertiser like a hunter. You know, when you want to hunt an animal, how do you go about it? You try and find out where is its habitat. You exactly try to see which is the time when it will be vulnerable, and accordingly plan your shikar or your hunt, so that you know you're successful in nailing that particular animal. Similarly, of course, I mean, it's not a very good analogy, but I mean, you get the general idea about it. When you have a product that you want to sell to a particular audience, what you should be doing is, when the advertiser has identified that this is your target audience, then you're trying to locate the target audience. Where can I find it? How can I connect with it? What is the time when it is at its most receptive? And then you sort of move in for your kill. So, but there is a strategy behind this. It is not a blind game, you know. You have to think over and decide how you're going to go about it. So I'll just share with you some of the behind the scenes, strategies that I used. So these, if you go to the next slide, you can see there are some steps to effective advertising. So the first and foremost of these steps is that you decide your advertising objective. It sounds like a very plain and simple thing to do, but let me assure you, this is the most important part of the exercise, in the sense that unless and until you know where you stand and where you want to be, you cannot really progress. So stating of advertising objectives is your first and foremost step. Let's say if you're a brand, like I said, let's say you're making watches, you have a certain target of you are selling in a particular segment. You're able to sell say 100,000 watches, and you want to increase awareness about those watches to say around increase awareness, or and dependent on that generation of awareness, you increase the amount of buying that is going on to. And then you have to specify, okay, this is what I am, where I am, this is point A where I am, and this is where I'd like to be, that's point B. So once you have stated your advertising objective, then you have to get into your situation analysis or gathering of information or intelligence. So if you're a watchmaker, then you have to first see what are the market trends, what are the kind of watches that people are liking, especially in your target audience. Let's say you want to promote your brand among the youth. So you will take a look at the market trends, which will include a study of the market, of the product, the competition, and the customers. So you see, okay, Citizen has this kind of a market here. Say Rado has another kind of market. Similarly, I mean, other watchmakers have a different have this kind of a presence in the market. Where does my watch fit in? Where is the gap where I can push in my watch? So you study the market, the competition, as well as the customers. Okay, if you want, what is the kind of watch you're having? Let's say you're trying to push this Raga, the Raga series of Titan watches. So then you know that, okay, you're targeting women, you're targeting probably working women who are in the urban setting. And so you see, okay, what are the kind of watches that they are actually preferring? What are the other brands that they are buying? And then why should they prefer your brand? So those are the kind of market trends you study. And then you go on to your market composition. For example, if we continue with the analogy of the Raga brand of Titan, you can see that that perhaps the market for your watches will be for women, let's say, who are aged between 25 to 40, and they'll be working in offices, so they wouldn't probably like to call attention to their watches, so that may not be, so they may prefer smaller watches. You may want to study the demographic data of that, okay, how many women are they, single, married, who buys for them, those kind of details you might want to get to know. And then also the psychographic profile, which basically gives you a psychological picture of your target audience. Most advertisers go in with they will imagine one particular member of your target audience and try and see their behavior and see where their product can fit in for them to buy. So that becomes so that's where you do your situation analysis. But that's not all that you do. This is only the second step. Then you go on to seeing what are the problems. Problems, that is, you go into research and you find out what are the perceived problems with your particular product. Maybe if you are looking at Raga, maybe the problem could be that working women don't like watches that are actually identified as being only very, very feminine. They might want to have watches that are more they have a unisex kind of an appeal. So that could be one problem which could come up in your research. Also, you through your research you can identify opportunities, that is advertising opportunities, which will actually help you to identify one feature of a product that can be used as a peg for the campaign. For example, with Raga, you could probably push that as a product which has a look of a bracelet rather than a watch. So that goes well with the bangles on the other hand. So that could be an advertising opportunity which other brands are not tapping into. And of course, you have to look at your target group or the market at whom you are targeting the entire campaign, and then outline the exact focus area. Okay, this is where I'm going to be pitching my advertising. So there are two parts to it. One is the creative part of it, and the other part is the actual execution of it. So how do you go about deciding the creative strategy for effective advertising? Uh, the components of a creative strategy include advertising appeals and execution, the media strategy, media considerations, budgetary allocations, and a very important aspect of it is the evaluation of your advertising program through pre-testing as well as post-testing. So within the creative strategy, you have the advertising appeals and executions, which we will go into in the next slide. But also your media strategy. Media strategy becomes very important because there are certain, your target audience may be accessing certain media more than the others. So if you're able to understand where they are likely to be found, which is the, are they more comfortable watching TV? Are they listening to the radio? Are they actually influenced by outdoor media? Are they influenced by social media, which is the next big thing now? What is the kind of media that appeals to your target audience, and where exactly, when exactly do they access it? Are they looking at billboards while on the way to work, or are they driving to work and therefore not able to pay attention to the billboards but rather listening to the radio? That could be one factor. At home, when they are back from office, do they switch on and watch news, or do they watch serials? Where to find them? What is the media strategy to be adopted? And accordingly, you decide your creative, because depending on the media you choose. And of course, the one important part of it is your budget. Depending on how much budget you have, it will depend on that, how much you can spend. You decide your media strategy and depending on your budget, and allocate accordingly. If you find that, let's say, continuing with the analogy of the Raga watches, let's say you find that your target audience, the women, are going home and watching a particular serial, you might want to put in a lot of money there, and you find that they're also listening to the radio. Sorry, excuse me. So if they are also listening to the radio, but only at the time when they're driving to office or coming back from office, so you would rather you would bundle your advertising onto radio and television. And you find they do look at the newspapers, but they generally don't have time to go through it properly. So you might want to just use the newspaper in a small way. So depending on your budget and your findings, your research findings, you decide and allocate the budget. But before you launch your advertising campaign, you need to pre-test. That's one big factor which has been responsible for many a failing. Lot of times it so happens that the creatives are thought of in one language, and the translation changes the entire meaning. That could be one factor. There are a lot of times that if you've seen government advertising in the 90s, a lot of times it used to happen that the ads were merely translated and not rendered into another language, which meant that an advertisement meant for the Hindi belt, people wearing saris with their head covered, and farmers wearing that safa on their head, and all those kind of visuals would be translated into, let's say, into Tamil without changing the cultural milieu of the ad. And without pre-testing, if you launch such an ad, it might have an adverse impact. So pre-testing becomes very, very important as a tool for you to know where your ad stands. And a pre-testing is ideally done with some members of your target audience. And then, of course, there are after the campaign is over, you need to understand whether you managed to achieve your objective or no. So the circle completes itself. From the objectives you start, and you go back through evaluation to see whether you actually achieved your objectives. So now, like I said, we will now go into how do you get into the creative part of your ad, because there are I mean, I must say that today's generation, the ads that are coming out in the television, social media, radio, some of them are so creative, they blow you away, you know. So the idea behind the one single idea, that the intangible, indefinable intuition that reaches out towards what is new, how do you get there? A lot of agencies, they rely on 2 or 3 methods basically to get there. Of course, there are some brilliant individuals who don't need, that intangible idea comes to them. But what helps is a brainstorming or working in groups. And you have a freewheeling exchange of ideas about a particular product, from where you actually figure out what is that one idea that can actually be helpful in pushing the product towards your target audience. You might also like to go into focus group discussions or interviews, where you have members of the target audience coming in, talking about the product, and from their discussions and their ideas about the products, you understand that where you should be pegging your own product. And another method to do that may be to basically list out all the various attributes of the product and combine them in different ways and see whether you can get that one big idea. So just to illustrate that point, you can see this graph. There is an accumulation of facts and analyses about a various product, about a product that you are going to advertise. It might be a product, it might be an idea. You could just be promoting your organization also. But again, you have to collect the facts about it. You might process them. From there, that idea, the big idea, comes up. So so the creative part of the advertising includes what is to be said and how it is to be said. So what is to be said is the selling message or the appeal. How it is to be said is the method of execution. So among the creative appeals, what you'll find in the next slide is the basic human appeals. That could be comfort, money, rest, peace of mind, prestige, beauty, sex, good health, so many of them. For example, if you look at the various ads for various automobiles or cars, you'll find that rather than talking about the features of the car, the advertiser talks about the value that the brand adds to your personality. So that's a basic human appeal, where you say prestige. So if you're seen to be driving a BMW, I mean, it adds to your prestige. The value that the brand adds is what they're talking about. They're not talking about the mileage that BMW is giving. They're not talking about whether steering is good or bad, or not the nuts and bolts of the car, but they're talking about how prestigious it is to have that in your garage. And some of the brands, they use other appeals, like of course that okay, if you buy this, you will have peace of mind. Okay, so that could be one appeal. There is another appeal that is very commonly used by insurance companies, and of course even for beauty care products, which is the fear appeal. It sounds a bit contrary to have people fear a product into buying it, but it's a very powerful appeal. For instance, the beauty products like skin whitening creams. The idea that is given with that ad is that if you are not fair enough, you may be rejected by suitors. You may not be successful in your career. You may have a bad day at your office. So you need to be fair and lovely so if you don't use this product, you may not be, and so you better buy it. So that is one fear appeal that advertisers use, that you'll be rejected and you'll be a little less among your peer group. And of course, insurance companies, they keep telling you that, what if tomorrow you pass away? What's going to happen to your children and your family? So that's another fear that most families have, and that appeal is a very, very strong appeal. And I must say, it works very well with this sector. Humor is one peg which has been very, very successful. if you've seen the ads for the Center Fresh chewing gum, you'll remember there's that boy who keeps failing, and he has that Center Fresh chewing gum. He gives it to his father so that he doesn't talk when he brings in his report card. That's a good appeal of humor. And humor has a very good recall value, and you'll find people discussing such ads a lot. There is that testimonial route also that is being taken by a lot of products. In fact, now we have channels dedicated to testimonial advertising, which is being done through testimonials alone, including like products like the Shri Yantra and etc., which promise, which actually bring to you people who claim to have used the product and have benefited out of that, and that inspires others to buy into it. And among the people who have used it, they may be people of good standing in society. They might be celebrities to add to the appeal of the product. So these are some of the creative appeals that advertisers use to get the hook onto their target audience. So out of looking at the entire, you've seen the entire process. You've seen that that there is a strategy that is there for advertising, which starts with the objectives and goes down to post evaluation, and the creatives that are used. So the entire thing becomes focused on finding the USP, or the unique selling proposition, which basically means that that particular ad will make a proposition to the consumer which will be beneficial to the consumer, and that proposition will be unique, and it will be strong enough to pull in new customers. For example, when the Rolls-Royce car was launched, the USP that they were talking about was they said that that it'll be so silent. I'm forgetting the exact words of the ad, but the USP of the Rolls-Royce car was that it'll be so silent that you'll forget that that you're actually traveling in a car. So so that was what they promoted, that it is so luxurious, it is so silent, and it is so well run. So from there an advertiser starts. So let me share with you one or two ads which will illustrate what I have been talking about. For example, if you go to the next slide, you can see this advertisement for Liberty shoes. The brand ambassador is Hrithik Roshan, and the tagline says, "Fortune, feel the passion take over." And the baseline says, "A feeling called liberty, come express yourself." So, so this ad, like you can see, is meant for those who have who aspire to be like Hrithik Roshan, who basically people who are watching films, people who would like to talk about passion. Hrithik Roshan stands for some kind of passion in whatever he does, and so your target audience is most likely middle class. It is aspirational, that the target audience. It is not this particular ad is not meant for, it's not a luxury brand. If you look at it, the shoes and all are not the concept of luxury is not there. So probably it's targeting the SEC B and C segments. It's actually showing the product, and it is talking about what are the feelings engendered by the product. Whereas if you go to the next slide, you'll find a very flat ad. It's for Sati Sabgul, and it's supposed to be. It has both English and Hindi. So obviously it is not really targeted at the premium segment. It is targeted at somewhere where they think that, okay, people might know Hindi, they might not know English, so they are trying to be safe and putting everything everywhere. And the next ad after that, if you see, it's for It's for a pump set. It's a very clearly an ad focused at businesses, and it is not trying to add value to the product through a celebrity or anything. It's a very plain and simple B2B, business to business ad, which is not really but it's very clear in who it is addressing. So let me share with you some of the successful campaigns that have been advertising campaigns run in India. You all are very familiar, I'm sure, with the Amul campaign, which actually uses the Amul girl, who, as you can see, is a chubby, very likable, lovable girl, wearing polka dotted bows in her hair and a polka dotted, frock, and she's very lovable, but she's very pert in her comments. The Amul campaign was successful because it actually connects with the audience through current events. So this particular campaign has been running for I don't know how many years. I think must be over some 3 decades or something. And if you look at the ads, you'll find that they're all very topical ads. When the Kingfisher company was sold, company Kisko Dia Jio was their tagline, was their headline. When the Prime Minister Manmohan Singh came to power, it says Handustan. For the 2G scam, it says phone banega crorepati. The fueled bill. So I mean, they're all very topical ads, and it's been a very successful campaign. Similarly, there are some public service ads which have been very successful. This one, if you go to the next slide, you can see it has generated a lot of comments and controversy on social media also. This ad portrays our goddesses being abused domestically. That is, it's against domestic violence, and they have used pictures of goddesses who are shown with. I'm not able to show you the zoomed in picture, but the goddesses are all having marks of injuries on their faces, just to highlight the factor of of domestic violence and how it should be condemned. Another noteworthy public service ad, if you can see the next slide, is about saving water. It's a very simple ad which just has a tagline: "Save water, save life," and it shows how water is running out, and the fish, it might not survive if the water gets over. This is another one which has been a very successful one, using an image from Indian mythology, where it says, "Care for your head, because not everyone gets a replacement. Please wear a helmet." So that's one. But sometimes, because we need the advertiser needs eyeballs. They need people to look at their ads. So a lot of times it so happens that that you use images, which are really in bad taste, like the next ad. If you can take a look at that, it shows a baby. What the advertiser is trying to show you is that if you don't use this particular product, there might be organisms, and there might be unpleasant. What should I say? That there may be microbes or organisms which may be detrimental to your child. To illustrate that point, they have used such a ghastly image. I mean, it actually revolts you rather than prompts you into buying that product. But the advertiser's concern here is the shock value, and they want that to be taken. So another slide, if you would like to see. Again, this is basically done for the shock value of it. Benetton had come out with a number of ads like that, which were said to be poor in taste. And the next one is another one which actually shows you stereotyping that is done by the advertiser to get the attention of, if you could just show it on the screen. It's basically demeaning to women, and such ads unfortunately are pretty common, and they add to they add to the to the perception that women are sex objects. And this ad by Ford was actually derided by many, and then if you look at the next ad, you can see that there are products that also promote body and self-image issues. Like we talked about skin whitening creams, there are also ads which most of the ads will picture in women who are very shapely and very thin, and that has resulted in a lot of mismatch in body image perceptions among women in India. Because Indian women have a different kind of body structure, and the models that are used in most of the ads have a different have a very different very slim kind of a structure, and that leads to a lot of body image issues also. So I'm just pointing these out to you so that you see that advertisements, though they can inform and persuade, in their quest for getting their target audiences, to buy into their products, making them look at what they have. A lot of times there are a lot of techniques and lot of images are used which may be disturbing, in fact. So as you can see that there are a lot of ads which are promoting stereotypes. One is of course the gender stereotype, that women, their places at home and they cannot. So if in the next slide you can see, it says, one of the ads says, the chef does everything but cook. That's what wives are for. And another one says, you mean a woman can open it? And another one which says, so easy, a husband could do it. So these are all reinforcing stereotypes that women are supposed to be doing these kinds of things. And there are ads which get around the ban that has been placed on those products. For example, advertising for alcohol and for tobacco has been banned. But products that are, but companies that are manufacturing those products are getting around that particular problem by using surrogate ads, like you just saw, wherein like Kingfisher and McDonald's are actually showing you, are using their exact the same logo and their presence, not showing the product but reminding people of it. So that's another important kind of a problem, which there are one more way in which advertisers actually get at you is to target your children. That's also a very disturbing thing. First and foremost, children are not able to discriminate well. They are not old enough to make choices or to make judgments. So targeting children may not be a good idea. And in fact, if you look at the kind of products that are being targeted at children, McDonald's is making the food that is being promoted by McDonald's is not really healthy, nutritious food. It may be classified as junk. So using children to get the parents to buy such products. In fact, in America, you had ads which were promoting buying of weapons, guns, actual guns by teenagers, which was of course later banned. And even promoting toy guns made by Mattel and other companies. These are also the kind of imagery that is used is pretty objectionable. Even more, if you can see the next slide, you find that cigarettes are being pegged. Are being sold to underage consumers. As you know, in India it's banned, and even in America now these ads cannot be run. But there was a time when such ads were being made, where you had it says swing to cools as you steady smoke. Then they grow up so fast, but not fast enough for big tobacco. These are all products not really meant for the children, but these are being targeted to them. Then you have other ads which actually promise you, they are totally deceptive. For example, there is this ad which says that the antioxidant power of pomegranate juice will cheat death, which is absolutely, I mean, it doesn't make sense, but it is there and it was being used. And similar are ads for various anti-obesity products, saying that you could lose weight by using them, you know. And then, of course, there are ads that exaggerate claims. For instance, it says the world's most liked vodka. The other ad actually says that less wrinkles in only minutes, and the kind of exaggerated claims or puffery that they are using is actually quite objectionable, because it cannot be sustained if you actually go into that. So similarly, there are so many other aspects to advertising which cause us some kind of mental anguish. They disturb us. They promise us the world and they are not. They deride other products, and they say that their product is the best. So there are a number of issues with advertising, and the kind of impact it has. So the question remains: does advertising influence society, and does it influence it in a negative way? So, of course, critics say that advertising abuses its influence on children and youngsters. I think some of us may agree with this statement. You've seen children asking for Maggie, asking for junk food, asking for what they've seen on TV, which may not be appropriate for them, because the advertiser has been targeting them. But what advertisers are saying is that they are not actually abusing influence. They are only mirroring society. This is how society is, and they're just holding up a mirror to society. And critics also say that advertising creates trends which may be dangerous. You know, like for instance, you could have a trend about these. Top of the mind is only the low waist jeans. That trend, it may not be a very nice trend. I mean, for people in the who are not careful in wearing how they are wearing it. And but advertisers are saying that they're only spotting a trend and portraying it. Again, the same argument that they have for their claims is that they are part of society. They are not bringing in something from outside, but only reflecting aspirations and desires. And a lot of critics are saying that the boundaries between news and entertainment are getting blurred thanks to advertisers. But advertisers say that it is their money that anyway is running it, and they are very clear that they distinguish between news and entertainment, and wherever it is paid for, they do point it out. There is a criticism that advertising is propagating values of materialism and taking people away from idealism. But again, the one big argument that the advertisers have is that this is how society is moving. They're not. There are so many other criticisms that advertisers face. People saying that their value systems are being impacted upon, that they are being made to the values that are being shown, their people are being made to desire things which they are not really needing. So beyond, I mean, even a person staying in a ghetto or a slum wants the best cell phone that they can, because there is a value associated with that particular cell phone. They may not want the very basic kind of phone anymore. So those kind of wants are being created, unnecessary desires are being created, people are being made more materialistic. The kind of ads, some of the ads are downright objectionable. So those are the kinds of criticism that advertising faces. But we must remember that most advertising does not fall in that category where it can be classified as objectionable. Most of it is neutral. Most of it is. There is also public service advertising, which I would say is one of the great information providers today, because otherwise how do you talk to the mass of people around you, and how do you communicate to them the various benefits they can you know, take partake of. So apart from which, advertising is also a huge industry, giving employment, making creative. It also adds to our lives. There are the music that it has, the jingles. We also recall, even today, if you want to evoke a particular era, you go to the ads of that era, and you can evoke that memory very well. So so the point is that the debate still continues on whether advertising holds a mirror to society, or whether it is shaping society. The debate is endless, but in the next session, and you can probably take a look at some of the books that are mentioned here for further reading. These are very interesting takes on advertising and society, and how either of them are impacting each other. But today's discussion was basically to just take you through the entire process of how ads are made, and these ads are coming out of our society only, but how they're going to impact, I mean, the what are the various standards that advertisers must adhere to, and what are how much it is impacting, that we will share in the next class. Thank you.
Okay, you said that advertising are just portraying the sentiment or expression of the people, but the fact is they are defecting the perception or aspiration of few, not the majority. So how far they are good, or how far they are be allowed to take to their stand on this issue, on such issues?
So you're very right, actually, that when you say that it is reflecting the aspirations of a minor section of society, but you must also see that particular section of society is the aspiration for more major part of society. So advertisers can't really be blamed if all our aspirations are for going to clubs, dancing, living the life of the super rich. So they're just tapping into that sentiment.
Okay, so though it's prevalent in few sections of society, but aspiration are all the majority of them. That's you say.
Yes.
And that's why they vindicate their argument.
Yes.
So as you say, some of the advertisement create conflict. So for them, is there any kind of mechanism, self mechanism, or the government mechanism should be in place, or already in place, that should not allow such advertisement to come into the public sphere?
Yeah, so you're very right. This is actually one aspect of advertising that has to be looked into. Of course, laws are already there in place. We'll probably discuss in the next class, like you said, about that. But there are boundaries that have to be set. Advertisers cannot be allowed to run amok and portray disturbing images or repeat stereotypes, etc. There is a whole
creating a conflict cannot be allowed at any instance.
Exactly. Yes.
So for that, of course, there are some mechanism, but on the part of advertisers, because they are the creative people, they are sensitive people, so they don't think on their own that such kind of things should not come out.
See, that is where ethical,
are there any kind of pressure on them that you will bring like this?
Yeah, that is what is called ethical advertising, and believe me, advertisers also, most of them, like I said, most of them are neutral. They try to be fair in their depictions. They have their own peer group, which actually puts in a lot of influence over them, and they do try to, but they also have their own standards authority, which we will go into in detail in the class, next class.
As you say that advertisement persuade people and also sometimes force people to purchase this and to make the decisions. So a kind of how you see, because the society has their own standards, society has their own way of moving forward. But advertiser, I said that now everywhere, so they have become part of the society. But still, the society people, they discard them. they don't, though they make decision listening to the advertiser, but when think over it, they ponder over it, they feel defeated. The purpose is defeated in some cases. So, doing such kind of things, how much, how you see this phenomena?
See, today's consumer is a very aware consumer. What you are saying is right. Previously, it was very easy to sell products to consumers because they were like blank slates. There were not very many mass media, etc., to influence them. But in today's day and age, there is so much of so much coming their way that they have become very alert, aware, and smart. But at the same time, advertising is very subtle. It's a mind game, and even when a consumer says that they are totally negating it or discarding whatever the advertiser is saying, you will find that that there will be a recall value, that they will that in their purchase decision, that fact they will factor in. Of course, now that social media has come in, that has changed the paradigm a bit, in the sense that now people rely on more on what their peers are saying through social media.
Okay, like previous, olden days, we believed on mouth to mouth.
Yes, word of mouth was popular then. So now it has just become.
Same is coming.
Yes, same is now happening. But the advertisers are also smart. They've also moved on to social media, and they are using a lot of people who are active on social media to sell their own products.
Some kind of allurement is also there. If you do this much, pass on to message, we will get some kind of
Yes.
Yes,
but that, I must say, that's a very unethical practice. Though I've heard that advertisers do that, but it may not be fair because when you are talking about word of mouth publicity, then you need to for it to be very fair, and it has to be on level ground.
Foul play. There is some kind of check on the foul play.
There is a check. There are laws. There are peer groups. There is a pressure from their own kinds. But the most important role that can be played is by the consumer.
Okay.
An alert and attentive consumer who can complain about malpractices will be the biggest counter.
You consumers are alert, aware. They go and search the things on internet, or you go and find out the details from their known people, peer group. But still sometimes they get cajoled by the advertisers and they take a decision in that favor. So how you define, how you describe the human psychology, individual psychology? Because you have the data, you have come across many such cases. So how do you explain the human psychology?
The funny thing is that even to make the consumer more, like you will notice, even if consumers are alert and active, they don't go out make complaints as much. You know, so advertising is being used to educate consumers also.
Okay.
So if you have noticed the Jagu Grahak Jagu campaign of the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, it's been very popular, and that is the whole crux of the ad, where it says that a consumer, when they come across a malpractice, they must make a complaint, they must make their voices heard. So that is where the lack is. A consumer will be alert and aware, may not take any action. So that's
okay. So what happened after post purchase? They should come out. They should express their opinion and all that, because till the purchase they are satisfied and all this. But after what happened, we rarely find such kind of responses in the public sphere, in the public domain.
Yes.
Because the people say, oh, now it happened, leave it.
Yeah,
So you are suggesting that they should come, only then we can get over it.
In fact, the easiest method now to do is on social media.
Okay. So in a way, social media is making more people aware and more.
Yes, that is my contention.
Yeah, and you have also participated in social media absolute freedom versus regulation. So we'll have discussion on this very issue, but not today, because today we have paucity of time.
Yes.
So well, friends, today we have seen how advertisers take the message from society, and finally they also deliver message to society, and accordingly society also sometimes casual, sometimes voluntarily do the things what they want to do. So I think today lecture have been fitted you to make a better decision. And with this hope, we conclude the lecture. And I thank all of you for watching the lecture. And on your behalf, I thank Dr. Salini Narayanan for giving such a wonderful lecture on advertising and society. Thank you very much.